If you're like me, you're no hardcore gangster, you're a nerdy action figure collector, and the closest thing that you've ever come to stabbing anything is probably stabbing that Capri Sun juice pouch. Remember that thing? You would go ham on it until it basically squirted in your face. Those are probably not the right words to use, but you get where I'm going with this. Capri Sun pouches were awesome. Keyword were. I mean, as an adult, you kind of look a little bit weird and cheesy sipping on a tiny little juice pouch. It's always kind of entertaining seeing a tiny little toddler fumble with that straw and try to stab that tiny little hole. But, you know, chubby little uncoordinated fingers. That's just how it goes. Anyways, I'm getting off track here. Let's get straight into today's video. I wanted to kind of flip on one of the last videos that we made where we talked about 5 of the most underrated Marvel Legends action figures. And today we're going to be talking about 5 of the most overrated, or I should say just overall the most disappointing figures that we've ever received for a number of different reasons. As I always say, it's a matter of personal perspective, whether something was really disappointing or not. I mean, certain people maybe didn't have very high expectations for some of these figures, but I personally did, and I was let down essentially. So I'm very curious to see what you guys have to say. Let me know your top 5 most disappointing figures from the Marvel Legends line. I will say it's nice that SDCC is finally over because we can make these type of videos. It felt like the last, I don't know, like 3 weeks we were just so obsessed with San Diego Comic-Con, and it's nice to get a little bit of a break, just be able to make content that I enjoy just a little bit more, you know, just kind of random nonsense where I get to talk about action figures, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So without further ado, let's get straight into number 5, where we have the Deluxe Marvel Legends Venom, and I'm going to go with the re-release only because I did not complete that original bath. And I have to clarify, this is not a bad figure by any stretch of the imagination. The only difference, or the only reason that this particular figure lands on today's list, is because I did expect a little bit more. I do remember seeing some reviews of the original bath, and there were quite a few issues overall with this figure. The body sculpt, a lot of people didn't love the toes, but whatever, it's a matter of personal opinion. If you're a toe guy, you're a toe guy, I've always said. But the head movement, the head articulation was really weird. I think it was the way that the head was sculpted. It really hindered the articulation there. You couldn't really look up and down or to the sides very well. And I believe this is right around the time that they released that Marvel Legends Hulk with the reverse butterfly joints. They may be like a year apart from each other, but I just don't understand why they didn't have any new tech for this figure. It was just essentially a repaint and a re-release of that bath. I just felt like they really missed an opportunity here. They could have easily done some minor adjustments, some minor improvements to this figure, and really forced people to pick up this particular version, even if they already had the bath. But they kind of just went with the cheaper and lazy option where they just gave us the exact same figure, exact same body mold. All of the issues that were present with the original were still here. I personally ended up picking up this one because I didn't have like my prototypical version of Venom, even though now I did pick up that Amazon 3-pack, and that's probably my favorite Marvel Legends Venom up to this point. But this one is a great option for people that, you know, prefer a bigger, a larger Venom, but it does not come without its issues, and that's one of the main reasons it's here. That head articulation, the head movement side to side is just horrendous. No butterfly joints. I know it's a big figure, but it's a Venom. I would have loved to get him into some cool poses. It's definitely not a bad figure. It just was disappointing, at least in my personal opinion. At the 4th spot, we have Spider-Woman in her black and white suit, and I have to say, honestly, just considering the fact that we got the newest female body mold, anything prior to that could easily be on our top 5 most disappointing. But I think we got to a point where we just expected to receive an old, outdated body mold prior to this new one, and it got really frustrating to a certain degree where there were a lot of people that just didn't pick up female characters. Now I will say, even though this is prior to that, this figure had so much potential, especially considering it is a Spider-Man character. Even the newer body mold, by the way, just in case you guys are wondering, the ab crunch is not great. It's virtually non-existent, and it's in a really weird spot. It's like right under the chest instead of actually being an ab crunch, and it really gets in the way of some articulation. And by the way, some of these figures still don't have a really good butterfly joint, but again, going back to the Spider-Woman, it showed a lot of potential. I love that head sculpt. I love the hair. I love the extra hand with the webbing effect coming out of it. I think that was a really, really cool accessory and a really cool extra that Hasbro decided to throw in there, but it was just really lacking in articulation. And that's just ultimately one of the bigger disappointments. Honestly, any Spider-Woman or any Spider female character could be mentioned in this list, but this one really hurt the most. A lot of us that have been following Spider-Woman in the comic books for quite some time definitely felt like she deserved a little bit better. And honestly, just those minor little tweaks like double jointed elbows, double jointed knees, some butterfly joints, a legitimate ab crunch, and an extra headpiece. That way, in case we wanted to get a really dynamic, crazy pose, the hair wouldn't get in the way. Like I said, it's not the worst figure of all time. It was just pretty disappointing, especially considering how long we waited to finally get a Spider-Woman character in action figure form. The third spot has to go to the MK3 Gamerverse Spider-Man Marvel Legends. This was a part of that Demo Goblin Build-A-Figure, and I have to say, this was one of those figures that really caught me off guard, at least in the announcement aspect of it. When this figure got announced, I honestly couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that they were continuing the whole Gamerverse universe, especially from the Spider-Man video game. We had already gotten the original one, which was the GameStop exclusive that looked, phenomenal, brilliant sculpt work and great articulation for the time. Obviously, now it's been outdone by that 2.0 version, but at the time it was considered basically like one of the best Marvel Legends Spider-Man action figures, and it wasn't even based on any comic book storyline, which is very rare. Usually those tend to have better articulation, and then anything based like in the video games usually is very lackluster. It's usually like just a very cheap repaint, but they went all out. But then it went downhill from there. I mean, this particular figure, I love the sculpt work, I love the paint, I love the design, I actually love the suit in the video game, but in action figure form, it was very lacking. It actually came with like no extra accessories that I can remember. I think it just came with like a fist and a web shooting hand. It didn't even come with any alternates. Absolutely ridiculous. The ab crunch was okay, but aside from that, it was really missing a lot of articulation points. There's no butterfly joints, and then the ankles are just absolutely brutal. You can't really get the rocker to work for you. So in a lot of situations, a lot of great poses that could photograph extremely well are not going to, because his foot just won't lay flat on the surface. It's very frustrating, and honestly, I had very high expectations, as I said, because the original or the first Gamerverse Spider-Man figure that we received was absolute fire. I just assumed that this particular figure would kind of follow suit, but honestly, it was very disappointing. It's not the worst figure ever, again, but it was just very lacking in accessories, no extras, and then the articulation was just not what I expect from a Spider-Man action figure. And following with that trend, at number 2, we have the Spider-Man MK1 suit. This was from that retro carded line. I'm not sure if this is actually based in the video game. I mean, there are a number of different people that say it's supposed to be based on something else, but to me, it looks like a video game action figure. And I have to say, I like the overall design, like in concept, but in action figure form, it was very lazy. It's essentially just a black plastic Spider-Man action figure with some silver paint around it, but there's just not enough detail. I would have loved a wash, maybe a little bit of damage on the suit overall or the armor, and then maybe paint those lines. I mean, one or the other, I guess. I can't ask for everything. But then aside from that, the figure was also very limited in articulation. It did not have any butterfly joints, which at this point, I don't even know why a Spider-Man body mold exists without butterfly joints. That I don't think should exist. It should be like melted down and turned into like water bottles or something. It's just ridiculous. It should never come to this point, and we have a certain level or certain standards that I think every Spider-Man figure should at least reach. Now, unlike our 2 previous entries that essentially came with no accessories, at least this figure came with a couple of little extras. It came with 4 hands total, the web shooting hands, some fists, and then 2 like web splatter effect pieces that are really cool if you're into photography or if you just want to display some of your villains getting splattered by web. I will say it was also a really weird figure to throw into this particular retro carded wave. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure where the source material or what source material it's being based on, but it just really didn't fit in with the wave that it was released in. I would have preferred this in like a Gamerverse style packaging, similar to what we got with that GameStop exclusive. But overall, it's a good solid figure. I mean, it's still widely available. You can probably pick it up for retail. It's solid, but it was just extremely disappointing. I had higher standards for this figure for sure. And then lastly, at the top spot for today's video, we have the Gamerverse Velocity Suit Spider-Man action figure. Now, I think you will only understand the disappointment if you're a huge Spider-Man fan, like if you have a Spider-Man tattoo on your left cheek. And if you're a true hardcore gamer, then you'll understand exactly why it is that this action figure was disappointing. We already had one that was Gamerverse related, and now we're circling back and attacking yet another one. Like I said, I think the first figure just set such a high standard, and we all kind of assumed that Hasbro and just Marvel as a whole was taking this particular action figure line seriously, because the first figure was just magnificent and it actually appealed to more than just gamers as a whole. I think people were like genuinely excited to see this figure, or at least had very good reception when it first got released. And so the expectations that we had for the other 2 figures in the Gamerverse line just had us really excited, and both of them really fell flat. This is probably one of the ugliest looking figures. For some reason, it looks like this Spider-Man suit has like really bushy black eyebrows, and then the color tones are just off. They don't really appeal to me. I don't love it. And then no butterfly joints. The ab crunch is an absolute joke. And then no extra accessories. I think it came with like one of those web effect pieces, but no extra hands. It had one web shooting hand and then one fisted hand. I would have loved to see some web crawling hands or something along those lines, something extra. But this body mold is an absolute joke. The paint is horrible. It was just an incredibly disappointing figure. And I feel like this figure might have been the one to kill the whole Gamerverse Spider-Man line. I know we did get like the 2.0 version, which was heavily criticized because it was like the newer body mold for Spider-Man and things of that nature, and it came with a plethora of different accessories, but the price point was just absolutely astronomical, and I don't think the value was there, and people really heavily criticized it, and that might have been like the nail in the coffin. But it's also very difficult to tell because the Velocity suit, for example, was a part of a bath that a lot of people wanted. It was really good sculpt work for that Build-A-Figure. So maybe a lot of people just bought this figure to get the Demogoblin bath, and so it's really difficult to tell. Whereas in the deluxe Spider-Man from the Gamerverse was a single release, and it was just much easier to see that maybe it was going on sale, or maybe it wasn't moving as quickly as other Spider-Man Marvel Legends. I don't know. Regardless, this is our #1 most disappointing Marvel Legends action figure. And at least for this video, like I said, there are so many other figures that could go on today's list, and we will be making more lists for the top 5 most disappointing. So definitely stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there. If you guys want to see more of this type of content, make sure to check out our playlist or some of our older content. You may be able to find something that entertains you for at least a few minutes. So stay safe out there. Thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget that the most important part of the entire hobby is to enjoy it. So make sure to do that. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you.